Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode 5 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. If you're new here, thanks for checking us out. We are a new podcast by the staff of NintendoEverything.com. You might have known us from the website, and we just kind of talk about what's going on in the world of Nintendo, be that the latest news, games coming out, you name it, we pretty much talk about it here. And I am being joined here today by Dennis Gagliardato.
Hello.
We've got Luiz Estrella.
Hey everyone.
And we've got Nicholas Shade.
Hello everyone.
All right, yeah, so as I mentioned, this has been a very busy week for news. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this podcast is probably already aware of most of it, because how could you not be? But for those who are not aware, let's start off with the thing that's coming up the soonest out of everything. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It was just announced early this week. It is coming out not in September, as it was originally announced to be, but it is actually coming out July 29th, and it came with a flashy new trailer, a little bit of gameplay, and a lot of people are very excited about this. Nicholas, I know you're excited about this.
Oh, so excited. You have no idea. I mean, first and foremost, the fact that the release date has been moved up is astounding, given that I can't even think of another time that's happened just in gaming in general. That alone is just a shock, and a pleasant one at that.
Yeah, it is really uncommon. I was trying to jog my memory and be like, when has this ever happened? But I can't think of anything. And especially coming from, this time period in which everything has just been delayed and delayed. The fact that we're getting this sooner than expected is very interesting.
Well, with a game of this scale too.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, it kind of goes to show. I think they're confident in what they have. It's probably super polished, and they're ready to get this thing out there, and into the hands of people. So, that's wild. Again, for a game of this caliber, compared to something like the other game that almost swapped places, right? With Xenoblade, which is Splatoon 3, which is of all games to sort of get delayed like that. Not that it had a firm date. It only said summer 22 before, right? So to 2022 before. So it wasn't, we never had a firm definitive date, but it's still weird because I think most people expected around June, July, because it's a proper summer game, right? The perfect game once you're out of school, maybe you're taking a break from work, but Splatoon fits that perfect summer vibe of get refreshed, stay fresh, I guess in their words, and just sort of shoot ink. But it's in terms of content, not to say Splatoon 3 won't be packed with content, but this is a family-friendly multiplayer shooter versus a gigantic single-player JRPG that just spans an incredible amount of hours with worlds that are just so deep and rich,
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about Splatoon 3 because that was also a huge surprise this week. But Nicholas, you said, with this game coming out so soon, with Xenoblade coming out so soon, and you said you've just been poring over the trailers and that you're so excited. And I'm as someone who is not a huge Xenoblade fan yet, I just haven't had the time to really sink into them. What is getting you so amped up about this game?
Yeah, so, I mean, first of all, it looks amazing, just visually. It feels like Monolith Soft progressively, every single new game they've been putting out for the Switch, first Xenoblade 2, then the expansion Torna, then Xenoblade Definitive Edition, they've been getting the hang of the hardware more and more, and just making everything look that much nicer. And I think that's very clear just looking at the latest trailer for 3. It just looks really pretty. So, I mean, that's a big part. Other than that, story-wise, they've already mentioned, at least I believe they've mentioned, it's supposed to be a bit of a mix of 1 and 2. It's bringing both of those worlds and their elements together. You'll still be able to play it as its own individual game, or so they've said, but just the fact they're bringing these two worlds together and kind of fusing them and mixing them is very exciting. The tone that the game is setting up, to me, seems a little bit closer to what Xenoblade 1 did, where Xenoblade 1 was a little bit mature than 2. 2 had some lighter moments, a few more jokey moments, which is not a bad thing at all. But this just seems a little bit closer to 1, especially because we've seen the ESRB rating. They're adding a few more mature elements in terms of having actual blood featured on screen and whatnot. And as a big Xenoblade 1 fan, that's very exciting to me. Not necessarily the blood, just the tone.
Sure. Yeah. No, I totally got that. Because, like, kind of similar comparison. Like, I loved the first Watch Dogs game. It was like a lot of people did not like it, but the first Watch Dogs game was great. It kind of had that darker tone that I felt like we weren't getting a lot of. And then the second game came out and it was just like total tonal whiplash. And then the third game, which I haven't played yet, but kind of seems like it's straying a little bit back towards, at least if you want to go for a more serious style of gameplay, you can do that. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that, Nicholas.
Yeah. Man, so much. I mean, in terms of the other things for Xenoblade 3, I really enjoy the little mysteries and the plot elements that's setting up. Showing us this weird giant red monster thing, the characters that look like they're brainwashed. That one shot in the trailer where the main character Noah is a child and has like a planet crashing down on him. It's showing us these tiny little glimpses of story that are enough to make you interested and catch your attention without flat out telling you, hey, this is what's going on, this is what you can expect. And from just a gameplay perspective, it looks like in the typical Monolith fashion, they're taking the gameplay of previous games and just kind of innovating on it. It's not just the same game with like another element tacked on top. We have similar elements. We have the break topple days combo. We have arts. We have a similar style of combat, but they're adding in different things. In the trailer, that we have both days arts and launch arts, which are elements from both 1 and 2, so they're mixing those together. We have fusion arts. We have the new Ouroboros forms, like those like mechanical fusion forms that the characters are taking, which in themselves kind of look like they're reminiscent of past Xeno games. Xenogears, which was I think Takahashi's PS1 game, and Xenoblade Chronicles X specifically. And so it's just all these elements that are coming together, but also the little twists they're putting on them, the little innovations that they're adding to all these little mechanics, all this this entire formula that looks like it's going to come out as like an amazing game.
For us Xenoblade fans, the trailers for Xenoblade 3, we can clearly see that there are things there that we will love. I mean, the story elements. When I saw the Ouroboros form where characters fusion into that new form, I mean that's typically Xenoblade, where a mechanic can both work in the gameplay department, but also in the story department, because we have those relationships between those characters. And I don't know where the bonds will go, but there's probably a strong relationship between those characters for them to transform into this new form. And it kind of reminds me of how the blades worked in Xenoblade 2, because there was this strong relationship between drivers and blades. And Xenoblades always explore the relationship between those characters and the mysteries of the world. And I mean, there's so many questions when we watch the trailer, and I just want to see them all answered in the game. So in general, it just seems that Monolith Soft is at the top of their games. And I have a video coming out tomorrow. I mean, if you are listening this, it probably came out yesterday. Talking about how I think that Xenoblade 3 will probably be the best one in the series. I mean, I can't know for sure, but it's looking like to be the best one in the series, because they have all this feedback for the first Xenoblade and the second Xenoblade, and they are kind of mixing everything, the best of each one together, to create the ultimate Xenoblade experience. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely can't wait to check out that video, Luiz. You always have really like in-depth thoughts and opinions on these types of things. So definitely check that out, folks, when that comes out. Of course, as Dennis alluded to earlier, that is not the only major Nintendo game announcement that happened this week, because just at about the same time that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced to be moving up, coming out in July, Splatoon 3 was announced that it's coming out on September 9th, which is, I suppose, technically in kind of the summer release window that they gave initially, but it's coming out at the tail end of it for sure.
It's
But
like last minute summer.
pretty much.
It's like right at the tail end, like they're about to miss the train.
Right.
They're just like, oh right, hold on. We gotta get on that.
But I guess you can't technically call it a delay then, because it does still technically
True.
fall in that window, right?
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
They didn't show off, at least as far as I saw, didn't show off too much more new about the game. They did show off a lot more gameplay. They showed off like a full match on their YouTube channel. So I'm just curious, like, where's everyone at with this game? Are you guys looking for some more Splatoon in your life?
Yeah, for sure. I'm personally excited for it. But Splatoon 2 didn't draw me in the way Splatoon 1 did. When Splatoon 1 initially came out on Wii U, I don't know if it was because it had that new carpet smell, right? Just because it was like a completely new property at the time. So it was just one of those things of like, oh, here's this new game. I can't wait to jump in and just, squeeze as much content as I can out of it. But yeah, everything about the initial Splatoon I just fell in love with, and when Splatoon 2 came out, I didn't put anywhere near as many hours. I put maybe like at most, it couldn't have been more than like 30-40 hours in that game versus Splatoon 1 where I put hundreds, and
Wow.
yeah, and the reason being honestly is because it just didn't feel substantially different. But I know people who played Splatoon 2 for the first time who maybe didn't own a Wii U, because God knows, there's a lot of people who did not own a Wii U. People fell in love with it, right? So I think they got that feeling with Splatoon 2 that I got with Splatoon 1. And I'm super happy for them because they realized, look, Splatoon is great. But coming from that history of Splatoon 1, there wasn't enough that felt different. Splatoon 2 literally just felt like more of an expansion pack to me. It did not feel like a brand new game. It looked almost identical. It didn't really seem graphically superior at all. It
Right.
seemed almost identical.
I heard that a lot at the time. A lot of people were like, oh, like, it's great that we're getting this, but Splatoon 1 had only come out a few years beforehand, right? It came out like 2015,
That's right.
I want to say. So
Yeah,
it was a pretty
it
short
wasn't long at all.
turnaround.
Yeah, it was a pretty, exactly, just like you said, it's a pretty short turnaround. So like maybe that's why, it didn't seem much different. I think it was just their way of like, rather than, have Splatoon Definitive Edition or Splatoon Deluxe, if you want to call it that, let's just do Splatoon 2. We have all the maps, we have everything here already. We're just, Control C, Control V. And then all we'll do is, sort of change up the story a little bit. But even that doesn't last long, right? The story is super short, and it's pretty banal for the most part when you think about it, because it's just like, oh, I need help searching for, my friend, I think it was Callie looking for Marie or something like that, and so it wasn't really much to it. It's like, okay, I mean, that's cool, I suppose. Right. But it's just kind of basic, it's just Splatoon. It's more Splatoon, which is, look, don't fix what's not broken, right? I mean, Pokemon's kind of had an entire legacy of not fixing what's not broken. They've had this kind of the same formula come out since '97, pretty much, right? So,
Well, yeah,
so,
and I think that's why people are so excited about Splatoon 3. I mean, personally, like, what has me most intrigued is just the promise of finally, after all these years, you're getting this full single-player campaign that looks relatively ambitious from what they showed off when they revealed the game. And considering, this game has come out about 5 years after Splatoon 2 did, that I'm really curious to see what new ideas they're bringing in this time. It feels like they're kind of keeping their cards close to the chest at this point. But, I mean, everything I've seen just makes it look like, wow, like they're really going hard on building out the lore of this game. And I know there's a lot of people that are going to be very excited about exploring all that.
Yeah, I'm personally excited. I know, it's without a doubt going to sell just like hotcakes, right? Like it's going to sell a lot. But again, it's from what we've seen so far, which has been surprisingly little, especially compared to Xenoblade. I feel like we've seen more Xenoblade at this point than we have Splatoon 3.
Yeah.
And again, which is weird, right? Because it's like, it's Splatoon, so you kind of know what you're going into. Here, you're going to have these matches where, you know, you have 2 teams of 4 kind of, you know, battle it out, and, you know, whoever covers the map with the most ink wins. But it's like, you know, what are you afraid of exactly? Maybe the reason why it is so late into, you know, the summer is because maybe, you know, they do need that extra time. Maybe it's possible that they announced it a little bit too early, but it's like, look, we don't want to delay yet another game. You know, we already delayed Zelda, which was already, you know, already causing a lot of turmoil for people. So, you know, not that Splatoon is on the level of Zelda, but you know, I'm sure it still means a lot to a lot of people. So,
Right.
It'll be just sort of interesting to see. I do suspect that we'll have a Splatoon specific direct. I have a feeling that's going to happen. And because the last time they showed it on the last direct, it was what, a little bit of Salmon Run. Okay, no one cares.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no one cares.
Aw.
Like, it's like the worst mode. No one cares. Like,
Aw.
Wow.
Well, that's
yeah.
why Dennis doesn't like Splatoon 2. Now it makes sense. No, but about what Dennis was saying, I think it was not the right call to... Because what they released was not exactly a trailer, was like gameplay of the Turf War. And it doesn't look that different. The same thing with Salmon Run on the last Direct. I think it's not a great way to sell the game. I'm not sure how many changes we'll see. Maybe the story mode is the big difference that we'll see here, because in that very edited trailer we could see some glimpses of a story mode possibly looking kind of different. But I don't think it was the right call to show just an edited gameplay like that, because it felt really similar to past Splatoon games. Of course, we had some exciting new abilities, like the ones that we already was showing some past trailers, but it's always exciting to see in action. But some things that just look like an update for the previous games. So I'm not sure how much Splatoon 3 is needed because they want to make new things, or just because the game is so popular in Japan that people people in Japan will buy this game like no tomorrow. So that's
For
probably
sure.
why Nintendo is releasing another one so soon.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is just that, you know, Nintendo kind of started slowing things down with Splatoon 2, I think way too quickly. I mean, they were supporting that game with the Splatfest, which are like, you know, the kind of like the live in-game events. They did it for a couple years, but, you know, I mean, that game still has legs. There's a ton of people still playing it, and it kind of felt like they were like, all right, you know, we're going to, you know, this is going to be the last DLC for this game, and, you know, we're not going to be doing any more live events. It just kind of felt like they did it too soon, and I feel like if they had kept all that stuff going, there really wouldn't be a need for a Splatoon 3 right now, just because of how active that game is. So
It's interesting too, because like, I mean, they could easily make Splatoon a completely, I mean, it already kind of is, but just a pure, complete live service game, right?
they could.
So here's just one Splatoon that constantly gets updated for everyone. We'll have that extra content for the people that want it, but it's always there, always readily available to be played. And I feel like they'd probably make a lot more money that way. Now, it'd be weird because, you know, I'm not saying make it free, but it'd be weird because you'd have to start implementing, you know, a lot of paid content, right, if they want to keep that production value up and the content
that would
coming.
be my
So
problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, I
So
mean, like, that's the kind of thing that you see MMOs do all the time, is you have this kind
of course.
base game release, and then, you know, okay, we're going to add, you know, maybe Splatoon 3's campaign mode could have just been a single-player expansion, basically, that you pay for, and then
Yeah.
you still have access
know
to
who's-
new multiplayer maps and gameplay.
Yeah. And honestly, the best example, because you know who's done it brilliantly, is actually a game that's not live service. Well, I guess it technically is, just in terms of like content updates, but not in the traditional format, is Hitman, actually. Hitman 3, when you buy that, comes with Hitman 1 and 2. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you get all of these levels, because Hitman, each game has kind of just felt like an expansion with like, oh, here's a couple more levels. We do have a story as well, but here's a couple more levels, and because really, I mean, there's not many levels, maybe 5, 6, 7 levels, but they're deep, rich levels, right? They're super replayable, and you can just replay them over and over and over again with just an immense amount of tasks and ways to, get your target. So, but Hitman 3 came with Hitman 1 and 2 tacked on because they wanted to create sort of the world of assassination, they call it, right? So when you buy Hitman 3, here's the entire Hitman trilogy, basically, in one package, because at that point it's just kind of a live service thing, and you can go and play that legacy content as well. And there's like time trials also, right? So you can you have leaderboards of who got their target the quickest and things like that, and people get super creative also, and they're super quick, and you can create your own levels in a weird sort of Mario Maker type of way. Maybe not as in depth. You're not actually starting from scratch with a level, but choosing an already pre-made level, you can choose a target, what certain tasks you want someone to do, so on and so forth. So. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Splatoon's in that weird sort of hybrid mode of here, it's live service, but it can also be played, locally. But it's weird because it's, again, you start to lose not necessarily excitement, but that captivating nature that would typically be a draw for multiplayer games like that. Something that, thinking of things that are still going, when you look at stuff like Overwatch or, probably the most popular of them all, probably like Fortnite probably, and, PUBG and, Call of Duty, Vanguard games like that, where they're consistently getting updates, right? And in the case of Overwatch and, well, initially how PUBG used to be, those were paid games. Right, so they did have a sort of price barrier at first, but they've been consistently updated, and they're still very much, have strong legs still. So it's weird, like you said, that they kind of started slowing down the content very, very quickly after that, because the Splatfests, I feel like, can only do so much because they don't really feel different, right? You just select a team, and then you do a match, and whoever won more matches, that's as an aggregate, sort of wins the Splatfest. So it's weird. I don't know. I feel like there's not enough rewards there as well, like you would see in more of like a live service game or certain events that are planned within games. So new weapons would be cool, maybe new cosmetic items, and you do get that on occasion, but it's just not frequent enough to warrant making sure that you're there for every single event. Like for me, I caught maybe a total of maybe 3 Splatfests after maybe 20, 30, 40 that they had. So because again, they were just so sporadic, and there was no consistency to them, and there just was very little motivation to participate in them as well, or just any event really. And yeah, I don't know, but we'll see. But my biggest gripe, I think, is something people actually don't talk about, because I think it's super detailed and they like looking at it. But for me, it's the hub. I think the hub is just not big enough. You see the entire hub within 5 seconds. You turn it on, you turn the camera once up, there it is. All right, there's everything.
Yeah,
I just want...
It's more of just a glorified menu screen than really a place to explore. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And I just want something that is more in depth. I like hubs that are, even if they are glorified menus, I just want something that's a little more ambitious and adventurous. I want it to feel like I'm going back home somewhere to relax and prepare myself again for the next match, right? So again, it doesn't even have to be that big. Monster Hunter is a great example of this. Monster Hunter doesn't really ever have particularly big hubs, but there's enough there, and there's enough space to make it feel like you can spend a decent amount of time there, prepare yourself before you go out and hunt for another monster. So I just want something bigger rather than here's 3 shops, and it's okay, that I can still access through my menu. It seems, I don't know, I just want something more, something more, make the hub just as exciting as the games themselves. I think that's, for me, a perfect balance.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's still plenty of time between now and September, and I'm sure Nintendo still has a lot to talk about with this game, so we'll probably get some updates over the summer, whenever the next Nintendo Direct is. But yeah, Splatoon 3 coming out September 9th, and I'm sure we will have a lot to talk about when it gets a little bit closer. Now, with all this great, just really, people who are Nintendo fans, they had some good news this week. There were also some stories that came out just about Nintendo as a whole, and I feel like it's worth talking about. Talking about the people behind some of these games that we all enjoy. I think it's really important. So just wanted to talk about this story. Originally came out on Kotaku, just on Friday actually, and basically, there's a lot that goes on in this article, and I think it's well worth a read through. Just some really great journalism here. But it's basically talking about, here in America, Nintendo's American branch, they hire a lot of contract workers to do like game testing and sometimes helping with other aspects of the game's development. And this article just brings forth a lot of stories from people who are contractors who have just said they are basically not being treated anywhere near the same level of the full-time employees who work there. That comes down to, of course, pay discrepancies, not getting paid as much. Some of them have been there apparently, for years and are in leadership positions and are managing these QA testing projects, but are not being given full benefits or are not actually being brought on as full employees. The story was also talking about how there's just kind of a culture of, we don't really trust our contractors. You're not really supposed to linger in the building. They don't want people speaking up about not being treated the same as the regular employees because there's a whole line out the door of people who want to go and work at Nintendo. So I just think I just wanted to have a little conversation just about, we all love the games that Nintendo puts out, but, I just think this is an area where we're seeing a lot of in game development with companies needing to value their people more. And it's disheartening to see it coming from a company that we all love the games that they put out so much.
Unionizing, especially. I think with unions, that's a word that I've heard more in the last couple of years. I think more than any other word, more even than DLC. It's something that I think it really started a couple of years ago with. This probably isn't the first one, but it's one of the first ones to come to my mind, which happened with when everything was happening with Telltale, right? Telltale was falling down. They had a lot of sort of in-house corruption, if you will, and they weren't properly paying their workers, and everyone just sort of, said peace and just sort of, left to a degree, and they crumbled. I mean, now they're back, right? But for a minute, they were pretty much defunct, which is a shame because we were like, a lot of people were like, oh no, that's. Wolf Among Us 2 was being worked on at the time. It got canceled, but now it's revived again, and it's a whole thing. But Telltale, for anyone who's not familiar, they've made some of the most incredible narrative adventures and stories in video games. I think probably within the last decade, and like obviously some of the more memorable ones are probably something like The Walking Dead. But of course, they've also dabbled in a lot of other franchises as well, like Batman, Borderlands, Guardians of the Galaxy, Game of Thrones, so on and so forth. So, they have just a very, very talented team of people. But Telltale aside, and just as a whole, there is the problem with contract workers has and always has been the fact that I think they're seen as disposable, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah. It's like here is, you're here for a set amount of time. We just need you to do this job. Once you're done, you're out. But it's like, okay, but for the time being, I am working here. I am technically employed, even if it's just for a set duration. So I deserve the same respect as any other full-time permanent employee would be, because even though my duration here will be significantly shorter, it doesn't change the fact that the work that I'm doing has any less meaning. And I think that's always been the problem with the way companies perceive contract workers is, again, it's, you're here and then you're out. We've got you in here to do this job, just get it done, and then you're gone. And it's that disposable nature that I just makes them feel that they're easily expendable, and it's just like, oh well, if you don't want to be here, we'll just get somebody else. There's plenty of contract workers out there, and it's just like, man, like you can't
Right,
have that
right.
attitude. Like,
Well, and in theory, like maybe if you were just working a 6-month contract or whatever, that would be one thing. But a lot of these people are saying, actually, I've been working as a contract worker, in quotes, at Nintendo for years, and they say they're still not really like just to kind of bring out something from this article, they're like, oh, we're allowed to eat at, like the Mario restaurant, basically, in the Nintendo headquarters. But other than that, we're pretty much like, we're not allowed to really just like use like some of the other kind of parts of the facility. Like they mentioned like there's like a Nintendo museum in the Nintendo America headquarters. The people who work at Nintendo, they can access stuff like that, but the contractors are really just not trusted. They said, Nintendo is very conscious about things being leaked from their headquarters, and so it seems like that might be part of the reason why they're keeping all these contractors at a distance. It's just a really interesting take, I think. Nintendo has always been a very secretive company, and you don't generally hear a lot from what it's like inside. And I should mention, I'm sure that there are a ton of people who work there who are super happy with their jobs. But yeah, Dennis, I think between, the whole conversation about unions and with everything we've seen with Activision Blizzard and some of the complaints that have come from their QA testers and their contract workers, I personally hope that these types of stories will have a more positive effect on the industry as a whole. Luiz, I'm really curious, what is the contract like work situation like in Brazil? Like, is that a thing in Brazil?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a specialist to talk about it, but I think in more recent years it started to become like really similar to how you guys say that you work in the US, where the contractors are like treated like disposable. So many companies try to rely on those workers to, I mean, not get as many workers' rights, to not pay as many workers' rights as you would usually with the people who work there as their main workers. I mean, it's kind of a complex situation because from what I heard in the Kotaku article, it seems like a culture that's been developed inside Nintendo. So there's like many higher ups, many people who have that mind inside where those contractors are not at the same level of the others that they call the red badges, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of when it becomes a culture inside the company, it's something really bad. And I hope that this article can bring some light not only to Nintendo but other companies that may be treating their employees in the same way. That I think every time an article like this comes out, it's a reminder that it's not okay to treat the contractors like that. So I hope it works like a warning for those other companies. I see a lot of people getting kind of defensive for Nintendo because they like the company and they don't want to admit that there's something bad inside. But at the end of the day, it's not about the company, it's about the people that work there. And if they are coming out, it's because they are not feeling okay. They did not. Some of the stories shared in the articles, I think, are something really bad, things really bad that happens there. So it's about the people that work there and to guarantee that things like that will not happen again. I think it's not about the company, it's not about the games, it's about getting a good working environment to make sure that at the end of the day we will receive the games that we like, but they were made by people who were happy with what they are doing, they were happy in their workplace.
yeah, because then you just end up having a Cyberpunk 2077 situation, right? Where it comes out and it's just broken and it's a mess because investors are like, get out of here. They got the whips and everything. Just get to work, Like, it's just, it's like, come on. Like, you got to treat them with respect to make sure that you get the product that you want because it will, backfire on you. And maybe it's a little bit too hardcore of a comparison, but I think with contract workers, especially with how much these publishers and developers, like, really rely on them, they deserve just as much respect, just because, again, this might be maybe too hardcore of a comparison, but it's almost like how the middle class is always considered the backbone of America, right? So, but as, wages stay the same, and as, inflation continues to happen, and the middle class in general sorts can't keep up with that because of, the wage gaps and whatnot, and then the middle class becomes poor and poorer and poorer and poorer, and then you just have, just split in half, right? You're either poor or you're rich. That's it. There is no middle class anymore, and then you have that economic collapse. So I feel like contractors are like that, right? Where it's just like there's this sort of disregard, more and more of a disregard to them, but you need them like so bad, and without them, a lot of games wouldn't be as polished as they are, or even get finished anywhere near as quick. I mean, games already take years to make, but
Right.
just imagine they'd take even longer if you didn't have that extra help and that, outsourcing, you know, those tasks and stuff like that as well. I mean, how
Yeah.
many times as
No, there's
not, yeah,
there's no doubt that it's super important, and I definitely I'm not like a super I don't really consider myself someone with a ton of like very strong political beliefs, but yeah, ultimately it just comes down to treating people well, and I think everyone just wants to see that at the end of the day. And what I thought was a particularly crazy coincidence is that on top of this story that came out, again, the same week that Nintendo announced these games are coming out, woo! There was also another report that basically was saying, kind of similar, relating to contract workers, but Nintendo outsources a lot of their work for repairing Joy-Cons. And apparently it's at least here in the United States, it's mostly done by this one company. And this report basically, they talked to someone who worked there, and he said, we have been overwhelmed. They had to set up a whole new section of their repair center just to repair Joy-Cons. They said they were getting thousands of Joy-Cons coming in per week that they had to fix. It was just shocking to read. It really, Nicholas, have you ever had to mail in a Joy-Con or get new ones due to Joy-Con drift?
So personally, I haven't. I have had several Joy-Con drift on me that I've ended up repairing by hand, just because I've had between moving between the Europe and the US, it's been a bit annoying with warranties for international Joy-Cons, since I've gotten some in both regions. But yeah, from what you had from the article, same thing, like workers being overworked. I think it mentioned they were getting like these thousands of Joy-Cons that they had to all repair within a strict 4 days to ship them back. It's just like it sucks. It really sucks. This case especially, given that this is a direct result of Nintendo's hardware just not keeping up.
Yeah, again, I love when these stories come out that are just like kind of just an inside look at how these companies work or sometimes don't work. And yeah, like I always, I've know so many people who've said, oh yeah, I've had problems with my Joy-Cons, and I've also gone and repaired some of mine on my own. But hearing that out, at least at some points they were dealing with thousands coming in per week, is just like so fascinating to me.
yeah. I've had I've had a fair share of Joy-Con drift on me, and I've sent in, oh my lord, I don't even know how much at this point, but they've made the process super easy, because I think Nintendo lost a court case a couple years ago, where because of the insane numbers of Joy-Con drifting, their sort of compensation was like, all right, look, we'll start doing Joy-Con repairs for free, right? We're not going to charge people anymore. Just send it, just go to our website, make a support ticket. We'll give you a label to print out, and then you just ship it completely free. Just drop it off at UPS or USPS, whatever, and ship it on over, and then you'll probably get it back within 1 to 2 weeks, and completely free of charge. Which to me was amazing, because I was like, man, not only do these things like not work half the time, but I gotta pay to send it in. Sometimes upwards of $100, and I'm like, you may as well just buy another set of Joy-Con at that point, because those are $70, $80. So it's crazy, but I've had my fair share sent in. I've never had, nothing's ever come out of my pocket, thankfully. But they do actually do like a fantastic job, and they do have a thing where it's like, look, if we can't fix it, we're just going to give you a brand new set. So really, it's a win-win situation for the consumer because you send something in, and regardless, you're going to get something back that works, whether it's your original Joy-Con, which they usually clean beautifully. Might I add.
Get all
or they're
that
just gonna give
grease
you a-
off. Get all that
Yeah,
Cheeto
yeah.
dust out of the cracks. And, yeah.
Exactly. And they clean it wonderfully too, because every time I've gotten a Joy-Con back, I'm like, oh my god, like it looks brand new. But they usually tell you if they give you a brand new set or not, because it comes with like this yellow page that has all the sort of diagnostics on it, and they tell you what they did, what they didn't do, what they found, what they didn't find. Yeah, no, I mean it's a wonderful, seamless process, but I can see why they're overwhelmed just because of how intense these cases are, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and it's understandable that so many people would be frustrated in this situation because here they are spending hundreds of dollars on a hardware, and then thankfully. My Joy-Con, my first ever drift experience didn't happen until years later, maybe like 2 years after the fact. But sometimes people are getting these consoles, and within weeks, their Joy-Con starts drifting.
Right.
So sometimes this just happens out of the box. Never mind, through rigorous use and the constant, as I feel like it's been the case now, where it's kind of been explained, where it's like the constant rotating of the stick because of the way the plastic is kind of cheaply made. The dust from the plastic kind of falls in, and can cause that disconnect between the inputs and the actual motherboard of the Joy-Con itself. So, but yeah, and the Joy-Con is like surprisingly not made of to me not made of many parts as someone who's built computers. So the Joy-Con is not made of many parts to me, because I've taken some apart to give them new shells and whatnot, make some custom Joy-Con, and it's kind of surprising, and it's kind of incredible to think that this little amount of dust can cause what it's doing, especially with when you look by comparison to other controllers, not just Xbox and PlayStation, but something like Google Stadia or the Steam controllers, where they're far bigger controllers, so there's a lot more that can happen there, and yet somehow they more often than not work perfectly fine. Not to say they're immune, but you rarely hear of the similar cases on their respective playing fields.
Well, and now that it's like in the discourse that like, hey, control sticks, they can have these problems. I feel like you have been hearing a lot more conversation about it. Like back when new consoles were released, gosh, that was a while ago now, when the PS5 and the Xbox Series X were released, that was part of the conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully whenever we get the inevitable Switch 2 or whatever that ends up looking like, hopefully they'll have it a little bit more figured out by then.
Yeah, it seems that they made some changes in recent models, but I'm not sure if it's fully fixed. It's weird because like we have analogs in controls in video games for years now, and the Switch has these problems. It's so widespread. I had to send mine 2 pairs that I had, and here in Brazil they don't fix. They send new ones, just like Danny said. And sometimes they send new ones, and the new ones have drift, and then they have to send it again. Yeah, it's very common.
Man.
Yeah. I think I've had to repair 3 sets myself, 3 or 4 sets. And they have added like a little, like Luis said, had like a little foam pad or something in the stick to try and prevent that wear. It just sucks. It's really surprising that this is still kind of an issue. Yeah. It's kind of crazy when you think that back when the first Switch launched, it was some people were treating this like this in legend, like, oh no, drift isn't real.
Well, the part that killed me also, my first pair I ever sent in was a blue Joy-Con that I had, the left blue Joy-Con. And I'll never forget when I waited like maybe 2.5, 3 weeks for that one, which is the longest I've had to wait. Usually I get it back within a week. So they're pretty quick, but that was the longest I had to wait. And what absolutely killed me, because I have video footage. I remember I was playing Fire Emblem Three Houses at the time, and Byleth was just moving on his own, So, and I recorded footage, so that's what prompted me to send it in. And I got it back, and they put on the notes, we couldn't find any defects. I'm like, get at it. What are you talking about? I wouldn't have sent it in. if there weren't any issues.
That's the worst. And I mean,
Yeah.
The defects we didn't find.
Yeah, but thankfully they still cleaned it, so and it actually has worked flawlessly since then. But still, I mean, when just the fact that when I read that, I was like, "There's no way I wouldn't have sent this in if there was no problem," So
Yeah,
I mean, it's something at the same time so small but so annoying because like it's not something to the level of the red lights of death that the 360 had or something similar on
Gosh.
PS3 where you lose your whole console, but it's something that you are playing and then you fall off a ledge or something really annoying in the worst moments possible happens. So it's really terrible to play with it.
Yeah, as annoying as this whole situation can be, it is also just kind of funny to me in a way. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the appropriate reaction, but I'm also just picturing. I'm also just picturing like this Joy-Con repair center. Everyone's just like furiously like testing the sticks and there's just Joy-Cons flying everywhere.
There's a mountain of Joy-Cons.
So, yeah, there's like a good pile and a bad pile, and the bad pile is just like up to the ceiling. Oh,
I just
man.
imagine everyone just like sweating over these things, probably a cigarette in their mouths, right? Where they're just like, just this is like a little monocle, just like a jeweler's eye, just
Yeah,
like,
like a watchmaker. Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh man, well, yeah, I was not kidding when I said it was a big week for Nintendo news. We are kind of running up on the end of the show, but one thing I definitely want to make sure we talk about is more entering back into rumor speculation territory. Everyone wants to know what's happening next with Switch Online, and you'll hear all kinds of things. People have been asking for new platforms for all the time, and people will continue to ask for new platforms. But early this week, we kind of got word that there might be something going on with Game Boy Advance. Apparently an emulator was leaked online that, for all intents and purposes, looks like something developed for the Switch, and even kind of has some hints that this may be a Nintendo project. And we are still kind of, again, talking in rumor territory here. But I just kind of want to get a sense for how, like, do you guys think this is real? Do you guys think we're going to get Game Boy games on the Switch soon? To me, it feels like an inevitability, but do you guys think this rumor is a real thing?
Yeah, so just as a quick input, on the last show, you asked me about when Mario Golf came to the Nintendo Switch expansion pack, is this going to get you to subscribe to the expansion pack? And I said it was close, but no. If anything will do it, it's this. This will do it. This will do it was the GBA stuff.
That's
'Cause
right. I do remember this.
Yeah, I especially all the games that were listed. Oh my god, like they speak to me and they have a special place in my heart. And yeah, like those Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games, like that was my era. That was, I think, some of my most fond memories of handheld gaming or just gaming in general. So and especially with the list that was, again, quote unquote leaked, because it is just a rumor. Oh yeah, no, that would do it. That would do it. I'm all in. Take my money at that point.
I think that's probably real, I would say. But maybe I'm being a little pessimistic, but I can't see Nintendo releasing that soon. Maybe next year, because it feels like they just added the 64 and Genesis, and they are still adding new games every month, and it seems so slow. But it feels like they are taking their time to add a console at a time. And a question that I would like to ask you guys. Do you think that if they add Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, the price would go up again?
I say
hope not,
no.
because it's already too much.
I don't
Yeah,
think they
I
can get
think
away
it's-
with it.
It's already too much.
Yeah, like it's already as it is. It seems like a bit of a hard sell to be like, hey, pay an extra, was it $30 per year, and you get just these N64 and Genesis games. I don't think that they'd be able to tack on another, even if it was just like $10 just for GBA. That would be very odd. I don't think that would work out for them.
You have to remember that, like, when you look at all these other services, $20 a year for Nintendo Switch Online compared to other services is a fantastic deal. However, the expansion pack is where things start to become questionable, right? And if what they're selling through this service because they don't offer much compared to other services as well. You don't get those monthly free games or anything like that. So, and cloud saves are locked behind Nintendo Switch Online, which is my primary use for it because I like having those cloud saves going. I have 3 Switches, so going between them, is the cloud saves are very, very helpful. So that's my reason, and my sort of draw to Nintendo Switch Online is strictly really just that because I don't really play the legacy content. But again, if you are just trying to pitch that legacy content as your driving force to get people to, purchase, your services, I'm sorry, but Xbox Game Pass Ultimate in particular is $15 a month and combines Xbox Live Gold with Xbox Game Pass for not only console but PC as well, right? And cloud saves are just on there, no purchase necessary, right? So even if you don't have that, like you have cloud saves, period, with Microsoft. So, and that is just a far better deal, when you're getting new games day and date, and then you do have that backlog of like those classic, Xbox 360 and original Xbox games as well, from a variety of studios that have made a name for themselves. Even ones that were formerly worked with Nintendo, like Rare, right? So you get the Rare collection with that, so you can play your Conquer, you play your Perfect Dark, so on and so forth. So, it's like I'm sorry, but $50 a year or $80 for a family, which is actually not bad if you can split that against up to 8 people, but again, you're asking a lot at the end of the day for a service that again rolls out its content way too slow, and because I doubt all those GBA games listed, if this is a service that comes to the Switch, I doubt they're all going to be there day one.
Oh,
you know what
for
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get maybe 3, 4, 5 at most, and then probably 8 months later, here's another 2.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
I did hear that they are going to launch the service with all of the licensed Shrek games, so you'll at least have those to look forward to. You'll have all the
wonderful.
licensed Shrek games that you want to play.
Oh,
What a
that's
treat.
I can't
amazing.
take
No
my money.
Mario or anything, but yeah, they'll put on
That's
those
not necessary
obscure.
if Shrek's going to be there.
Yeah. No, I think if this is real, I think if it is, we'll probably see something in the fall because that
Yeah.
seems to be what they're doing, right? Like right around the time when people are considering, oh, should I renew my subscription or not? They announced the SNES games, like I want to say 2 years after they launched the Switch Online service. And then, or actually maybe it was just a year. Anyways, and then it was also in the fall that they announced in a totally different year that we're going to add N64 and Genesis games. So I could see them doing a similar thing and just being like, hey, if you have the expansion pass, great news, we're just adding this on for free. I don't think they could get away with much else.
No. I think they've consistently announced additions to it. Both the SNES and the N64 were in September. So assuming that this is pretty close to completion, because I really do believe it's real, there was just way too much data released. It might come this September, which would be a very pleasant surprise. I don't know if we have many... from the initial lineup of N64 games that they had announced, I don't know if there's really that many left to transfer over to the N64 Online. So it's possible that once that's done, they'll switch focus to GBA, which would be nice. I'd really appreciate that. Getting to play Golden Sun again, Minish Cap, would all be really great. I really do think it might have been better if they had done this last year, just because of Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission. It's a little odd that this is happening so long after Dread has released, considering how those games went to the top of the charts on the Wii U eShop afterwards. There was a lot of demand for it. You'd think that they should have
But
done
get the
better.
Nicholas,
impression-
you don't need them on your Switch. Just go play them on your Wii U. That's
You joke. That's what I did.
Oh, I don't blame you. I went through and I
Man,
bought
Wii U,
Zero Mission on the
Wii
Wii
U
U.
has like 1,000 cables to turn it on.
Oh my god, I know. It's such a pain.
Yes.
Like I had to
Massive
set
hassle.
mine up I set mine up I think 2 years ago because I was in it was during October and I really wanted to just go back and play some older horror games, and I wanted to play Fatal Frame, Maiden of the Black Shrine, and so I hooked up my Wii U specifically for that because I never finished it, but I didn't end up finishing it during that time, and man, it was such a pain to hook everything up. I was like, I kept questioning myself: is this worth it? No, not really, not really. Not if it's just for this.
The operation system is so slow just to turn it on and then to go to the game. I hate to turn on my Wii U.
It's to help you build anticipation for like what you're gonna play next.
Yeah, for this big experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The power of the Wii U is bursting at the seams. We're getting your game ready.
It needs more
There's a
stability.
reason why it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's a reason why the name sounds like a siren. So.
Yeah, there you go.
The GBA games right now, I think they are like way more valuable than the 64 games. So if they like, it's really hard to get to play Metroid Fusion and those Minish Cap, like you said. So I think it would be a great addition. I hope you guys are right. I hope that we see it in September. I think it would be perfect.
Just last thought about the online, since we're talking about it. They have added the Octo expansion for Splatoon 2 to the expansion pack.
Yes.
So it does seem like they're trying a little bit to put some value into that. I mean, the Octo expansion is kind of old at this point, but it's interesting. Back when it was initially announced, and they announced that the Animal Crossing New Horizons DLC was there, I was hoping that they would do more of this, like just bundle more DLCs into it, just to give it a little bit more value. And it's nice to see that they do seem to be doing that between Mario Kart and now this. So hopefully we'll see an eventual Splatoon DLC, maybe Xenoblade DLC, possibly Breath of the Wild 2
Xenoblade,
DLC.
Zelda, Fire Emblem.
I could see Xenoblade, yeah. If they tacked on Torna, but the thing about Torna is like they need to make it so you can also play the standalone version, because I think if you limit it to people who only have Xenoblade Chronicles 2, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And I think it would
true.
immensely increase the value if they can just play the standalone version as well.
Yeah, that's kind of my problem with their whole, like, I like that they're at least trying to add in the value by including some of these DLC expansions, but they're also asking you to go out and purchase the game if you don't already have it to get the value out of the subscription that you're already paying for. So you're really not getting anything unless you've already spent a lot of money on some of these games. And it also doesn't really seem like there's a lot of rhyme or reason when they make these expansions available. So, there are some games that have had expansions that we might just not ever get as part of the expansion pass. It's not like they're putting everything on there. So you're kind of buying in to the expansion pass, maybe with this hope, maybe a DLC expansion that I'm interested in will come at some point, but there's a good chance you may have already played it at that point too. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Just hoping that going forwards, this is the direction they take. We'll have to see.
Well, that about wraps up all of the news from this week. But before we say goodbye for another long 7 days, what has everyone been playing lately? Let's start with you, Nicholas. What have you been playing this week?
So recently finished Kirby Superstar on SNES Online. That was very interesting. I've talked about it a few times. A very different kind of Kirby game, but it was fun to play through and fun kind of. Let's just see what the roots of the relative roots of the series are. Now that that's done, and now that I suddenly have two less months to do it, I've been kind of sitting down with Xenoblade 2 and just really going at it. And I'm actually fairly close to finishing it. I managed to do the majority of the quests, and I basically just have the challenge mode stuff to do with that, which I've never done before. So I'm hoping that's not going to take too many hours to get done.
Well, consider me impressed. I feel like that's like all we're gonna hear from you once Xenoblade 3 comes out. Every week when we ask this question, you're gonna be like, "Yeah, Xenoblade 3."
December 2023. Yeah, the second chapter of Xenoblade was pretty nice.
Oh, that's great. Dennis, what about you? What have you been playing lately?
Yeah, so I've been kind of just flip-flopping between two. So I have been revisiting, because I never really sat down and really took the time to play it all the way through, but now I have been. So I've been revisiting Guardians of the Galaxy. So I've been playing through that and just having a wonderful time with that, honestly. It feels almost like a weird sort of hybrid of just it feels like Guardians, like how you would expect it to be, but it has these odd little Tomb Raider elements to it as well. It feels like, but it's developed by Eidos Montreal. I know they've dabbled in Tomb Raider before, so So, but yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful game, and they don't shut up. Like the amount of dialogue that's recorded for this game is immense. They're all talking to each other just consistently. It's crazy, but the dialogue is fantastic. Though that game is hilarious. But when I haven't been playing that, and I want to just sort of relax a little bit more, I've been playing Grow Song of the Evertree. Played it a while back on the Nintendo Switch. And we did do a review for it on at NintendoEverything.com. But started replaying it again on the Xbox Series X and S, and yeah, it's just a wonderful, wonderful time. It's made by the people who developed Yonder, Cloudcatcher Chronicles, so the good folks over at Prideful Sloth. And if you loved Yonder, you're gonna love Grow. It's a fantastic, beautiful, serene, very tranquil game.
Is it? I'm trying to refresh my memory here. Grow Song of the Evertree. You said, is that kind of, is it like a Metroidvania? Is it just like a straight
Oh,
up?
no. It is like super relaxing. Like it's interesting. It's sort of hard to describe because Yonder was super unique also, where you're basically on this island. Now in Grow's case, you have this tree that's withering, and there's all this corruption everywhere, sort of symbolized by this like purple, sort of sharp, almost thorns. They look like rose thorns almost, but purple and sort of poisonous looking. And yeah, you just try to bring the tree back to life, almost this very Yggdrasil looking tree. And while you're doing that, you're sort of rebuilding the town. A lot of this land has been lost to this sort of corruption, or the withering as they call it. And yeah, it's just your job to just sort of bring it all back together. But it's super relaxing. Like when I say relaxing, I'm talking like, not like, it's not a farming simulator, but it's just this,
Kind of like a
it's
life
just super
sim?
serene.
I'm looking at it. It seems like just kind of like a chill kind of, maybe
To a
Animal Crossing
degree.
type game.
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, that's a good perspective. Yeah. Again, it's hard to explain because those particular games are so unique. Not to say that
Right.
there aren't other games that aren't like super relaxing like they are, but the way Yonder and Grow sort of does their version of what it means to be relaxing and what it means to have a cathartic experience is very much different, and it just feels a lot more natural. Like when you play those games, you just sort of you get lost in them because your mind just gets clear. And yeah, they're just wonderful experiences and a great way to sort of wind down after a long day as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I can't believe I hadn't looked at this game before. It looks like a real hidden gem.
Oh, it is.
Looks like a
Yonder
good-
was fantastic too. So.
Looks like a good Steam Deck game for when I get my Steam Deck.
Oh,
Looks
yeah,
like the kind of
yeah.
game I love to play on the go. All right, Luiz, what have you been playing lately?
So that's not a pro gamer move, but I did not play anything this week.
Oh,
Hey,
I
no, you
just
know what?
realized that.
No,
I've been watching
no,
movies, anime, but I didn't play anything.
No, I think that's good. I think that's important. We talk about games so much, but it's important to acknowledge we all have lives and other hobbies.
That's true.
Sometimes you just don't get to something.
Well, I think it's also important to just, relax too, because games can be, even for relaxing games like Grow and Yonder, right? Where like, they can be mentally intensive because you're there with a controller in your hand and you're putting in these inputs, so you do have to pay attention to what's happening versus when you're just watching a movie. You can just sit there, relax, and just, lay down, stretch the legs a bit, and, just take, consume the media that way without having to, really have much outside input after that, so it's important to take care of yourself that way. And,
Yeah,
not-
that's exactly
yeah.
it. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood to interact with what's happening in the screen and so on. So did not have the time to play anything this week.
Well, you said you watched some movies. Did you watch anything interesting?
Yeah, I recently watched the Batman movie, the recent
Oh,
one that
man.
just came
So
to
good.
HBO Max.
That was so good.
And it's
Yep.
fantastic. I think I think it's my favorite Batman movie. Not 100% yet on that, but it's pretty great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I need time to think on it, but yeah, I watched it on HBO Max also, and like, it was fantastic. But yeah, I mean, when the moment the credits rolled, I was like, wow, that's got to be one of the best Batman movies,
Yeah.
if not. I don't want to say the best just yet because The Dark Knight I'm in love with. I've watched that movie hundreds of times, but yeah, well, maybe not hundreds, but but tons, like well over 40 times it's got to
Yeah,
be.
it's
So,
hard to surpass that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I saw that movie too. I saw it. I saw it. I think it was either opening night or like the night after, and it was so good. I went back and I saw it in theaters a second time. But that first time I saw it, all the Batman fans were there, in the crowd, and not to spoil anything, but obviously it's a Batman movie. The Batmobile is going to be in there somewhere, right? So
Of course.
that scene where they reveal the Batmobile, the guy in front of me was just losing it. He was like, yes, like he was actually screaming. He was like clapping. He was like, yes. Oh, and in my head I was like, dude, I'm right there with you.
I've only ever been to an opening night for Iron Man 3, I believe. And well, no, that's a lie. I was in opening night for one of the Avengers movies. I'm trying to remember which one. It wasn't the last one, but maybe the one before that one.
Infinity War.
And yeah, Infinity War, yeah. And man, I mean, it is when you're there with a passionate group of people, the energy is just, it can't be matched, especially when you have these people that have sort of varying sort of levels of passion. And like you were saying, Nick, the guy in front of you just losing his mind when he saw the Batmobile, right? Like I live for that, you know what I mean? Just seeing everyone just get so stoked by what's being, seen on the screen. And that's what makes the theater experience just so wonderful, honestly, for movies like that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, as far as for what I've been playing lately, we were talking so much about Fire Emblem Warriors last week, and it made me think, I never did go back and finish Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I'd started it, but I hadn't finished it, so just the past couple days I've been jumping back into that game, and played it on my TV this time. I was playing it handheld the first time around, and really just reminding myself, like, wow, like, it really is surprising how good Nintendo and Koei Tecmo are at taking these franchises that are just not a good fit for Dynasty Warriors games, you would think, and translating them into that genre. So I've been having a great time with that game.
Yeah, Age of Calamity was such an interesting, I don't want to say proof of concept, but just such an interesting show of how they managed to transition Breath of the Wild's gameplay style into a Warriors game, which hopefully they'll be able to follow up with Three Hopes.
Yeah, the thing that's really been sticking out to me as I play through it a little bit more is just, whereas I feel like Breath of the Wild is it's a very smart game. It really makes you think a lot. Age of Calamity is just a total power fantasy. It just wants you to make you feel like a badass as much of the time as possible. And so I think looking at those games together, it's like super interesting. In Fire Emblem, you feel powerful in those games too, but there's also a lot of thinking. So I'm really curious to see.
Age of Calamity is so powerful that not even Switch can take it because
Yeah, that is true.
It's crazy how much things appear on the screen and the Switch goes, oh my god.
Yeah, no, you are right about that. It definitely, sometimes playing on the TV, the Switch feels like, I don't know if I can take too much more of this. But yeah, it's been fun. So hopefully I'll have that wrapped up in the next couple days or so. But in the meantime, folks, that is our show. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 5 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. As always, if you have any suggestions or feedback about the show, feel free to leave us a comment down on YouTube, or you can send us an email to our show email, which is in the show notes. We are now on pretty much every streaming platform that you could possibly want to listen to us on. So Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're pretty much out there. So go check us out wherever is most convenient for you. And we will be back next week with more of what is going on in the world of Nintendo. Thank you guys, as always. See you next week.